Hi, y'all. Now for something a bit different for my channel. One of the reasons why I call it engineering improvisation, because yeah, I used to play these. I haven't played a gig in probably over 20 years. I only get to play these occasionally now. And I was getting them out to kind of oil them and look them over because I have been sitting. And I kind of realized I have kind of one saxophone of three different major eras in the evolution of the saxophone. So I thought I'd just make a video about it. So just for something different, and hey, why not? So a bit disclosure, this may be a long video, so bear with me. Another is, since it's going to be a long video, I'm not planning on playing these. However, if you want me to, let me know, and why not? Maybe I'll play something, and let me know kind of what you want to hear, and maybe I'll give you a few tunes. So with that, let's get going. So now it's a bit of a history and just kind of go over what really changed from generation to generation. And there's a bit of a skip in these, and there's a difference in manufacturer. So there's a lot going on here, and I'll try and not belabor too much of it. I'll start very quickly. This is a 1920 Martin Handcraft C melody, C tenor, in the key of C. Most saxophones are a tenor in B flat, alto in E flat. So this one's in C. Um, Way back before the Depression, um, most households had a piano, and a lot of people played these C melody saxophones because since they were in the key of C, they could play piano and vocal music without having to be transposed. And I have this as a bit of a novelty, but it's kind of a fun horn to play. So again, 1920 pre-Depression era. So I'll kind of go over this one real quick. One thing you gotta really pay attention with these old pre-Depression horns, if it focuses in here, you see it says low pitch. That's extremely important on these old horns. And it's not even just the C saxes. Any instrument, whether it's woodwind, brass, doesn't matter, look for low pitch because there were two tuning standards at the time. There's the A440 American standard and there's the A457 or 57 hertz European standard. Now, manufacturers of instruments had to manufacture a lot of different instruments in order to cover all their bases. Well, the Great Depression in America, 1929, was of course kind of a shot heard around the world, and in order to survive, one companies, especially I'm looking to focus on saxophones here, um, stopped making C melody saxophones because they were a novelty, and no manufacturer could continue to do two tuning standards. So discussions ensued. The American A440 standard was the one that won out. So that is the low pitch. If you see an instrument that says high pitch, it could be a wonderfully playing instrument, but it will never play in tune. Ever. You can't do anything to a high pitch instrument to make it play in tune in modern tuning standard. So unfortunately, sometimes the high pitch instruments can be used for parts. Most of the time, they become wall art or lamps. So if you see a really nice instrument that's a lamp, don't worry. Most likely, it's a high pitch horn and is of no use to anybody. Now, as far as the way this plays, this horn, I mean, it is Martin Handcraft. It plays just as well as any Martin Handcraft from the era. This thing plays wonderfully, but the ergonomics are terrible. It's rather uncomfortable to play. It does key down to, of course, low B flat and high F, although those who play saxophone notice there's no vent key. So if you want to try and do altissimos, you're doing overtones or you're doing alternate fingerings. And now with also in these C melodies of this era, I'm talking again about the generation of this style of horn. This is what's called a split bell. Your low B, it's on this side, and low B flat, it's on this side. Not necessarily a rhyme or reason or that. I mean, again, I'm going over the history very briefly. I'm not going to go too deep. But a lot of that was just the way the key work and the way they decided to build the instruments. Another thing that makes these a bit interesting is you notice this neck has a double bend in it, similar to a tenor. If you notice, this one is far exaggerated as far as the height of the bend. So the one thing gets kind of annoying with that. Now, actually, in the C melody, you could get them. They did come, some of them, with necks that had a single bend in them, like an alto, but the neck was very, very long, which pushed the body of the horn away from you as you were playing, and that wasn't necessarily that comfortable either. So this helped, but here is a problem. So when you're playing a tenor and you're in the, playing music and stuff, this is pretty much what you see while you're playing music, you're reading music. You see just the top of the neck, and it's not a big deal. On these, this is what you see. I mean, that neck is completely in your field of view. So you're moving around so you can see the music you're trying to play. So that can get rather annoying. So that makes it uncomfortable. This makes it uncomfortable. But the sound for these old instruments it can be pretty hard to beat. So that's pretty much, I think we'll stop on this one. You see, unfortunately, this one has been polished within an inch of its life, unfortunately. And that happened long before I got it. You almost can't even see the engraving anymore. Because whoever tried to restore this thing before generally didn't do that great a job. So I had to do some repairs to it myself, but it's a decent playing. Okay, so this is pre-depression, split bell. Ergonomics aren't very good, but it is a fantastic playing horn. Sound is really good. All right, moving on. Okay, now moving on to my tenor. So it's also a Martin, so same manufacturer, and there were iterations of the horn in between. But this is a next pretty major step up. So this is a 1946 Martin. So you see in the bell, it just simply says the Martin tenor. Now the instrument before this one was called the committee. This one doesn't say committee on it, but most will often refer to this as the committee series 2. Now this isn't on the serial number. It's early 1946, and production of these instruments came back up in late 1945. So there was a bit of a hiatus from World War II, because obviously a lot of people who manufactured things in brass were, of course, making things for the war effort for World War II. And then, of course, you get to this era of horns is long after the Depression. There's a serial number, but then that's it. There's no low pitch, high pitch, because again, we're back to a single tuning standard. And now this instrument is also from the Art Deco period, and big band is still big. And that influenced a lot of the design of this instrument. Now, of course, the table keys on the left pinky are a bit different, but they really don't take any getting used to. They feel pretty natural. But you notice now, both bell keys, the B and the B flat, are on the left side of the bell. So this is the instrument, of course, hangs off to the right side. So this guard just rests against your pants, your slacks. Then protect the keys, and then the things don't get bound up. And this wonderful Art Deco design here on this key guard. And it's kind of similar to what you'll see around the instrument. It's a little bit Art Deco in this engraving. Not as much as some of the other Martins. There are some that are really Art Deco. Almost look like the Chrysler Building and things like that on the engraving. So what was going on here is, well, one, the ergonomics of this instrument are fantastic. There are no issues. Very comfortable to play, seated, standing, all of that. Very, very nice. Everything fits and lands where it should. And we have now the vent key. So you can more easily do altissimos, front E, front F, and you can do front F sharp, because this doesn't have the F sharp key. Obviously, a chromatic F sharp for the right hand, but there's not a key over here for a high F sharp. We'll get to that in the modern instrument. So now, why? So the thing about having the keys on this side, remember, we're talking big band, Art Deco, war's over, things are getting flashy. So that was the idea here. Is now you have this large, especially on the larger instruments like tenors and baritones, large unobstructed space for large, elaborate engravings. And this is the side of the instrument that's facing the audience. So it's for show, really. Now, there is one drawback having the keys on this side of the instrument, is kicks the horn, is sitting against your pants, it does kick the horn away from you a little bit. But again, the way this was designed, they really thought about that, and the key work kind of compensates for that. At least it's certainly the way it feels, because it doesn't kick your right hand away from you too much and you even really notice it. It's pretty comfortable to play. And the fact that this key guard, being somewhat elaborate though, it is very smooth. So there's nothing here to snag your pants or anything like that. It's actually a very comfortable instrument to play, and I really enjoy it. And the sound from these old Martins is wonderful. So if you get a chance to play one of these in good setup, so I almost can't stress that enough. So that's an issue. A lot of people will have these horns. They say they play these horns and they hate them. Well, to set these up properly is completely different than it is a modern instrument. You can't set them up the same way. I have seen really good technicians set up a Martin and they are a disaster. I mean, because it's just the spring balance is completely different. Setting up the key heights is completely different. Getting the alignments is quite different because the key work is a bit unique. But if you can find a really good tech or you get a chance to play one of these with a really proper setup, they are wonderful horns, and they will hold their own. And this may be a bold statement. This will hold their own to a lot of some of the Mark Sixes, some of the balanced actions, and so on of the era. I mean, this was one of the instruments to have, but it has to be set up properly. Okay, so now with that, we're going to move on to the modern era. Okay, so now for this, my old alto. I've had this thing forever. This is a 1981 Selmer Mark 7 alto. Now, unfortunately, the Mark 7s don't really get the love they should because, well, there's a strong act to follow from the Mark 6. And of course, a lot of folks complain about intonation and so on and so on and so on. But again, you find a master tech who really knows what they're doing and be able to do a proper setup. Seriously, this is an excellent horn, and I've played a couple Mark 6s before, and I've played a Mark 6 that was incredible, and I've played several Mark 6s that this is way better. So it's all in the setup. Setup on saxophones is so important. Now this one is a later Mark 7. There is a complete absence of engraving. So there are some stories about as to why, and they're so varied. I'm not going to get into any of that. But here we are with modern keywork. Now, thing about the Mark 7, if you notice the right hand pinky table, the keys are much larger than they were on previous instruments. Now, again, this is a Selmer, these are Martins. I'm not going to try and compare them because they're completely different manufacturers in different countries for that matter. But this style of keywork, this is the first instrument to see this style of keywork, especially the large right-hand pinky tables. And in a lot of instruments after this became rather standard. So that's why this is a pretty good indication of the modern era. This is the one that kind of kicked off some of the modern key work that we see on instruments today. Now, granted, there's been more evolution, and newer horns have even additional keys. Like this one has the high F sharp, and some even have a high. This is split, and the lower is a F sharp, and the upper is a G. And this one stops at F sharp. Of course, you still have the vent key. So you have options, at least for high F sharp. You can key up or you can front. But again, the keys in this one, it's a little noisy, but the key action on this is so fast. I mean, it's lightning fast. So the spring technology had definitely increased by this time. And again, of course, now you have a serial number and a series of patent numbers. Of course, that's very common to Selmer. And your pants guard here for these keys, bell brace. But again, no engraving whatsoever on this instrument. So again, this is pretty much where the start of modern keywork came into play. And again, this is a fantastic horn. So there you go. So we're spanning more than 60 years in these instruments. And of course, even this one being now 40 years old, it still plays wonderfully. And this was, I got lucky. I happened to live next to a well-known master tech, and he completely shopped this horn. I mean, top to bottom, front to back, everything. And it still plays about as good now as it did back then. That was almost 30 years ago. So again, you find somebody who really knows what they're doing, they can set you up a fantastic horn. I can't stress that enough. So yeah, I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Now don't worry, I'll get back to cars and golf carts and other engineering stuff, at some point. Um, so hey, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, awesome. So as soon as I get available, get time to do other projects, I'll be sure to get those on my channel. And I don't normally ask, but if you could kind of hit hit a few subscribes, because the minimum in order to earn some chump change is 1,000 subscribers. If I could hit that, that'd be great, and that would help me be able to do a few more projects and provide more content. So that, I'll wrap it up. Y'all have an awesome day.